Good morning, friends. Welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash, and in this video, I'll be discussing with you economics current affairs for 8th November 2024. I have selected two important articles, one from the Mint newspaper and the other one from Indian Express newspaper. First article speaks about, in a very broad way, it speaks about the wide relationship, economic relationship between India and the United States of America. So whether it is trade, whether it is investments, right? Whether it is trade of goods, whether it is trade of services, presence of Indian diaspora in America. So we'll be looking at it completely, right? So it's an end-to-end kind of mapping of India's relationship with United States of America that we will be looking at. And the second article speaks very deeply and in a very insightful manner regarding the dedicated freight corridors that we have been building. Okay. This is also a question which can very easily come into your examination because it is related to infrastructure, it is related to supply chains, it is related to boosting the efficiency and productivity within our economy, right? So it's a very important topic, and of course the government of India has been spending crazy amount of money over here, so it deserves our attention, right? So with this, let us start our discussion. If there is any doubt, please ask in the live chat itself. I'll address the doubt here itself, and that will be better for you, better for me, right? And if you have any suggestions regarding the topic that you would like me to cover, please feel free to make those suggestions. I'll be happy to honor your request. Right. Having said that, let us start with the discussion. So this is carrying forward from yesterday's discussion. All right. We have already discussed an article on Trump yesterday. I told you all that we'll be discussing a bunch of articles on Trump, on United States, because that's now important for us. Okay. So the idea is that to put some important numbers and put some important ideas in front of you first and foremost. So see, United States of America is seeking to diversify away from China, right? And we want to attract investments, we want to attract opportunities towards us, right? So this China plus one strategy, could very well be a China plus India strategy if we are able to play our cards right. Right. So US wants to move away from China. We want people to move towards us. And in that sense, both these countries are at the same point looking at almost the same thing. Now, obviously, US is not looking at just as a China plus India strategy. US will also be looking at China plus Vietnam, China plus Japan, China plus South Korea, etc. Right. But the idea is that if we speak about the trade relations, there has been a decent momentum in our trade relations in recent years, because US is trying to reduce its dependence on China post the kind of experience that they had with COVID-19 pandemic, right? And India wants to play a bigger role in the sense that India wants US companies to establish base in India. That is point number one that you have to appreciate. Point number two, if you look at some recent numbers, okay, and these numbers are very important. I wanted to note them down, the ones that I have just highlighted in yellow. So these numbers are very important. So if you look at India's export of goods, okay, so that has increased from around, let's say, $55 billion to, let's say, $80 plus billion in this span of 5 years, which is a significant improvement. On the other hand, if you look at our import numbers have also increased, but the pace of increase has been fairly moderate, from, let's say, around $33 billion to $40 billion in the same time span, right? So you see that US is a very big market for us for exports, and not only is it a very big market for us for exports, but it is also offering us a trade surplus, in the sense that with respect to the economic relationship with US, we earn more from US than we spend on US, right? So from US, we are basically a net earner of foreign exchange. That is very important, that we have to have a trade surplus with some of our important trading partners, and US is one of those cases, right? So this positive trade balance is important. US is an important trade partner, that is important, right? Of course, for US, this is a cause of concern, right? This negative trade balance is a cause of concern for US, in the sense that US is spending more on Indian goods than earning by selling to India. I will repeat myself once. US is spending more on Indian goods than earning by selling goods to India. And when Donald Trump will take the White House, he will for sure look at this negative trade balance and say that, okay, this needs to be rectified. This is a problem. This is a problem which will land up in his inbox, right? So what is happening to Khalistani, activists in US, or what's India doing on that front in Canada, etc. Those things may or may not land in Donald Trump's inbox. It may or may not cross his, area of concern, the way he operates. But the kind of transactional leader that Donald Trump is, with all due respect, he will look at this negative trade balance of US and tell India that India, you need to buy more American made goods because we want to make America great again. We want to have an America first approach, and this negative trade balance is hurting us. So this is something that we have to be very careful about, that how he responds to this going ahead. If we speak about our services exports, right? So again, in services exports, India is enjoying a surplus, right? Again, some numbers. So if you look at the positive trade balance, right, the number is $13 billion in 2023. This is the positive trade balance number, right? So we are exporting significant amounts of telecommunication, computer and information services, etc. And we are also importing services such as financial services and audiovisual services from the US. All done, it is a positive trade balance in favor of India and a negative trade balance not in favor of United States of America. Again, he will look at this, and this will be a point of discussion. He will not let it just slide under the carpet. हाँ चलो ठीक है कोई बात नहीं, India, you're a good friend of ours, you can earn more from us. I don't think that that's happening, right? It didn't happen in the first term. It is unlikely to happen in the second term. Now let us look at something else. Okay, let us look at the foreign direct investments that are coming in from the United States of America to India, right? And over here, this number is very important. Okay, that from April 2000 to June 2024, around 10% of the total FDI that is entered into India has come from United States of America, right? And US companies, they have been investing in some decent amount of money in India's supercomputer industry, right? So this is also which is very significant for us, right? So whether it is from, let us say, a technology transfer point of view, or whether it is, let us say, from frontier manufacturing point of view, or whether it is from an industrial revolution 4.0 point of view, or very simple terms के अंदर बोलूँ तो self reliance, right? कि in a lot of areas, if we can become self reliant, we can become self reliant with this kind of investment that is coming in, right? So I hope that you are able to appreciate that whether it is goods, services, investments, or the diaspora, that is the significant, the Indian diaspora, 4 million strong Indian diaspora that is a part of the US population. It's very important. These relationships are very important, right? Now, there are 4 reasons why there will be uncertainty. Reason number 1, right? Your Make in India campaign and their America First approach, okay, it kind of collides with one another, right? So as a part of our Make in India campaign, we are, always, or not always, but we have been imposing trade protectionist measures in the sense that we don't want to import, we want to produce whatever we can within India, and we want to export a lot, right? So that's basically the core thrust of Make in India, that import less of certain items in the name of self-reliance, in the name of Atmanirbharta, try to produce them in India, and definitely try to export as much as you can, right? Americans are trying to do the same thing, right? So we are trying to do the same thing where we want to import less, export more. They may also want to do the same thing, import less, export more, and hence there is a collision. For example, in 2018, Trump imposed tariffs on steel and aluminium imports, right? And it definitely had a negative impact on us. India retaliated, imposed a hiked import duty on apples, almonds, steel, and chemicals, right? These items, right? So these are items which are exported by the US. So basically, these are the kind of measures, retaliatory measures, tit for tat measures, right? That will obviously be creating a lot of uncertainty going ahead in the next 4 years, right? Trump will be taking office in January of 2020th January. 20th January is when he will be assuming office. So since then, say later next around next November in 2028, let's see what happens, right? Now this anti-immigration approach. Now this anti-immigration approach of Donald Trump, you need to understand that as of now, the major focus that has been there has been on illegal migrants coming into the United States of America from their southern border with Mexico, right? So a lot of focus has been on stopping this illegal immigration that is happening into the US. Now Indians by and large don't illegally migrate into US by and large, right? So what kind of migration happens? Migration of skilled Indians, educated Indians, highly qualified Indians, doctors, engineers, scientists, researchers, and so on, right? But you have to realize that when Trump takes a hard line on this illegal immigrant issue, he is naturally also going to take a hard line on the general immigration issue. If you look at what happened in his first term, so H-1B visas are visas which are temporary visas provided to skilled workers, let us say from countries such as India, to go and work in the United States of America, right? And L1 visas are basically visas which are used by companies for intra-company transfer, in the sense that if I am, let's say, Microsoft, and I am having, let us say, a worker in here in Bangalore, and I want that worker to go to, let us say, Baltimore and work over there for some time, let's say hypothetically, so then they can do that through the L1 visa. Okay, so if you look at the first term, so if you look at the denial rates of H-1B visas as well as L1 visas, so the denial rates shot up, right, to 17% and 28% respectively. Okay, so the kind of leadership that is occupying White House will definitely have an impact upon these aspects. Again, it's like very likely, right? So this is also a cause of uncertainty, right? Thirdly, if you see Trump's retaliation to measures taken by India against US companies, right? So if India makes a policy decision, or if India decides that, okay, we don't want to allow these kinds of mergers to happen, or we don't want these kinds of investments to come in, or we don't want to give this kind of market access to this company, and if, let us say, US company is hurting by that, and that US company complains to Trump, you don't know how Trump will respond, right? Fourthly, unlike Vietnam, Chile, or Mexico, we do not have a trade agreement with US. So not having a trade agreement with US is a disadvantage, because if you have a trade agreement with US, then there is transparency, there is predictability. There are rules of the game which have been established, and by the rules of the game you approach what you approach, right? Now, given the fact that the WTO has been weakened, WTO's dispute settlement process has been weakened, the necessary appointments that should have been done to the WTO's dispute resolution mechanism body, those appointments have not been done, right? So the idea over here is that A, WTO is weakened, B, Trump is not interested a lot in these agreements, whether it is bilateral agreements or mega regional agreements, such as, let us say, you know, your various kinds of agreements that are signed between 10 countries, 12 countries across the Pacific Ocean, across the Atlantic Ocean. So he has not been so interested in these, right? So essentially what this means is that US has a lot of room to play around with tariff barriers, to create trade restrictions for a variety of different reasons, right? And that can definitely harm businesses not only within India but also in the United States of America, right? So it's not necessarily going to be negative. It's not necessarily going to be positive. What is it going to be? How will we navigate? That is the challenge that we have to address, right? Because see, honestly, we have a very good relationship with Donald Trump. Modi ji has a very good relationship with Donald Trump. Trump has, called out China and is suspicious of China, is skeptical of China's rise, and he makes, he doesn't leave it unambiguous. He's very, very clear about it, right? So can this help us? Can this anti-China attitude that US may have, can this help us? Only time will tell, right? So lowering trade barriers, harmonizing regulatory standards, establishing frameworks for digital trade, these will be helpful steps, right? So I want you all to be able to point out certain helpful steps that can be taken. Once you have identified the opportunity, identified the challenges, I want you all to be able to point out what are the steps that can be taken, right? So maybe having a free trade agreement, you never know, right? Having a free trade agreement, maybe having a deeper defense integration with them, a deeper defense tie-up with them. We'll have to put something on the table for them to be able to put something on table for us, because Trump at the end of the day is a transactional leader. Obviously, you don't go and write that in your answer that Trump is a transactional leader, but you have to approach in that manner, right? Apart from that, multi-stakeholder consultation, right? That will be important. So what is this multi-stakeholder consultation thing, right? So whether it is the industry, or whether it is the academia, or whether it is government, or whether it is policymakers, or whether it is think tanks, or whether it is the media, right? So we need to get all of these tracks functioning, right? We need that kind of consultation, and we need to see how we can, do business with India, right? So like for example, agro processing, healthcare, renewable energy, right? So there is significant scope to increase trade and investment between our two countries, right? US can source more from India, right? Have partnerships with Indian companies, right? Autonomous tariff reductions by India on certain products that could help India's bargaining power, because like I said, that you'll have to give something. You cannot continue to ask for things anymore, right? So in that sense, we need a targeted policy approach, right? We need to make sure that we are able to support our small and medium enterprises, get them access to market, right? We need to make sure that trade facilitation is strong, right? That business to business relations are leveraged. They are already strong relations. We need to leverage them. That trade complementarities are appreciated and nurtured. That common geostrategic interests are simultaneously and jointly pursued, right? So there is a lot that can be positively achieved between India and US, right? Yes, there is uncertainty, which we have to be pragmatic about, which we have to identify, which we have identified, but at the same time, we have to be very optimistic, futuristic, and constructive in our conclusions, which is what this article has been, right? So in that sense, if you see this article from opportunities to uncertainties to optimistic and constructive way of moving ahead, this article gives you everything, right? So please try to answer this question, right, based on our discussion now, that discuss the future prospects and challenges for India-US trade relations in the light of Donald Trump's election. How should India prepare to navigate potential shifts in US trade policies while maximizing economic opportunities in bilateral relations, right? It's a very specific, very pointed question. And for once, I have been able to, discuss an article which ticks almost all the boxes when it comes to helping you answer that question. Moving to the next article about dedicated freight corridors, right? So like for example, what are dedicated freight corridors? Let's just very quickly understand, right? That when we speak about DFCs, so these are very specific routes for freight transportation. Like for example, Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, DMIC, right? So it's connected by a dedicated freight corridor in the sense that only freight trains, only Mal Gadis will run on those tracks and nothing else. No passenger trains, no Rajdhani, no August Kranti, nothing will run on that track except for Mal Gadi, right? So it's a dedicated corridor for freight transportation. So how that helps is that typically your Mal Gadis, they are given a second priority, and passenger vehicles, they are given the first priority. So when, let us say, a Rajdhani or a Shatabdi or a Duranto or whatever needs to pass, so then what will happen is that your freight train, your Mal Gadi will have to stand aside, will have to halt and allow the passenger trains to pass. So typically what that does is that it increases the journey time for the freight trains. It increases the journey time. It increases the time that it takes from, let us say, a good to reach from Bombay to Delhi or Delhi to Bombay. It reduces the incentives, for industries to transfer their, to transport their goods via freight trains, because they don't have that kind of time. They need to reach their customers in a timely manner, so they cannot wait around, right? So having dedicated freight corridors where only freight trains will run, no passenger trains will run, reduces the delivery time, makes it faster, makes it efficient, makes it certain, right? And it's very, very helpful to the industries, because road transportation can be expensive, railway transportation can be cheaper because of the nature of transportation, right? So in that sense, if you understand what dedicated freight corridors are, right? So we are providing basically this transport capacity. We are providing faster transit of freight trains or malgadis, right? We are running double stack container trains. What are double stack container trains? It means that if this is, let us say, your wagon, on top of this wagon I have placed this container, on top of this container I have placed another container, right? So I have essentially doubled the capacity, increased the speed, and I've done it simultaneously, right? So what this does is that it is significantly improves the supply chain, right? It helps your industries and logistics players who are located along the way, right? And it helps in the growth of export import traffic along these corridors, right? So if once you have a fair understanding of what DFCs are, right? So we have taken up two DFCs as of now, right? So one DFC is a 1337 kilometer long eastern dedicated freight corridor. So it is starting from Sonanagar in Bihar to Sahnewal in Punjab, right? So if this is India, right? If this diamond is India, then this is one corridor, this is another corridor, right? ये थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो गया. Sorry about that. And then there is another 1506 kilometer western dedicated freight corridor, which is running from JNPT, which is a port in Mumbai, to Dadri in Uttar Pradesh, right? So both these projects were started in 2006, right? Now your eastern corridor is complete, it is commissioned, right? There are feeder routes to different coal mines and thermal power plants, meaning that there are other smaller routes which are connecting from this main branch of this eastern corridor. Your western corridor is 93% commissioned. Feeder routes are also functioning and they are connecting with cement plants and ports in Mundra, Kandla, Pipavav and Hazira in Gujarat. So Gujarat के ports को भी हमने connect करा है apart from the Kandla port, and it will be completely operational by December of 2025, right? If you look at money terms, which is very important for you to understand, so we have spent nearly 95,000 crore, right? You can say nearly 1 lakh crore has been spent on executing the DFC project, excluding the land acquisition cost. Okay, so you have a fair understanding of what are DFCs, what are the two DFCs that we have created, where do we stand so far as commissioning of those DFCs are concerned, right? So see, the idea is that DFCs, they are improving India's GDP, right? How is it improving India's GDP? They are lowering the transportation cost, they are increasing the transportation speed, right? So our ability to fulfill export orders, etc., our ability to connect with markets, distant markets, has definitely improved, right? And obviously these DFCs, they are becoming a significant source of revenue for the Indian railways, because अब क्या हो रहा है कि जो freight का जो revenue है, which the railways was losing to road transport, so railways will not lose it to road transport, railways will be able to earn that money, right? So like I mentioned to you that there is a reduction in freight cost, there is a reduction in travel time, right? It has also helped in reducing the price of commodities, okay, to a certain extent, and it has contributed to around 3% of revenue growth for the railways between 2018 and 23, right? So this is all coming from an Australian study that was done, all right? So you understand the headline benefits of DFCs, you understand what are the DFCs. These are very good starting points, right? Why were the DFCs needed? Like I explained to you, right, that we were overutilizing the railway infrastructure, right? So there is something called as a golden quadrilateral, which is railway tracks which are linking DMCH, that is Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai and Howrah are connected, right? And there are two diagonals, that is Delhi is also connected with Chennai, which is a north-south diagonal, and Bombay is connected with Howrah, which is the east-west diagonal, right? So कुल मिला के ये diagonal, ये जो routes है, they were getting overutilized in the sense that passenger trains plus freight trains were running on the same tracks, right? So that was the overutilization, right? So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these are only 16% of the railway tracks of India, but they were carrying 52% of the passengers in India. They were carrying 58% of the revenue earning freight traffic in India, right? So you can see that how deeply overutilized these tracks were, right? Apart from that, like I have mentioned to you, that railways was losing share in freight traffic because you as a producer, you want faster transport, you want certainty, right? Which railway was not able to offer to you. So hence you are choosing roadways, right? So the idea over here is that we want the share of freight traffic by rail to go up to 45% by 2030. That is what we want. Uske liye we need dedicated corridors. So therefore dedicated corridors were announced for the first time in 2005-06. September 2006 के अंदर Dr. Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister, he laid the foundation of the Eastern Corridor at Ludhiana. October 2006 के अंदर laid the foundation for the Western Corridor at Mumbai, right? So ये सब हमने कर दिया. उसके बाद we created an organization which is your Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited, DFC CIL, right? So this is your SPV, that is a special purpose vehicle. Whether it is construction, operation, maintenance, it's a single specialized expert body which will do everything, right? Apart from that, Modi ji has recently inaugurated 3 latest stretches of the DFC, right? So something on the western front has been inaugurated, something on the eastern front has been inaugurated, right? If you look at the current status, you don't need the numbers, but just to give you a complete understanding of how these DFCs are working. So 325 trains are running per day, which is 60% more than last year, which is very good, right? Freight trains, they are faster, heavier and safer, right? कुल मिला के 232 बिलियन ग्रॉस टन किलोmeters and 122 billion net ton kilometer payload has been moved, right? No need to try and understand how much of this, how do you try to understand this payload, but just इतना imagine कर लो कि बहुत माल को जो है move करवाया गया है इन corridors के through, right? Now, more than 10% of the freight running on Indian railways, it is now handled by these DFCs, and this is only going to increase going ahead, right? So definitely this is positive, right? हमने ऐसे 4 और corridors plan कर रखे हैं. There is a east coast corridor from Kharagpur to Vijayawada. There is a east-west sub-corridor from Palghar in Maharashtra to Dankuni. There is a east-west sub-corridor too, right, from Raj Kharsavan to Andal. And there is a north-south sub-corridor from Vijayawada to Itarsi. So we are creating parallel tracks, right? So there's this Australian study which I just mentioned about to you, right? So I think that इस article के अंदर whatever we have mentioned regarding DFCs is quite good when it comes to being able to handle almost any question based on DFC. Because why did we do it? What is it? What are the positives out of it? And what are we planning for the future? All these sub questions are getting answered in this article. Please do try to answer this question as well, right? So I hope that you have learned significantly new stuff in this particular edition of our series of lectures. We are doing this series of lectures on a daily basis at 7:35 a.m. in the morning from Monday to Saturday. We started this exercise on 1st May, and this note is available on the Ecoholics app free of cost, right? You just need to download the app, do the registration and download the note, right? So we'll keep doing this exercise. Tomorrow is Saturday. We'll be dedicating Saturday to discuss government schemes and programs, right? So let's meet tomorrow again and take it ahead. If there are any comments, please leave your comments, please leave your reactions. They are very valuable for me. Thank you so much. All the best and Jai Hind to all of you. Bye bye.